Senator Roger Wicker. He's here to talk about the presidential race, the national debt, the war against terror, issues in our nation's capital impacting all of us here in South Mississippi. Senator, thanks for joining us this weekend. It's nice to have you on board.
Tough agenda you've got here.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about. We have you for 2 segments, so we're going to be all over the road. I want to start with the presidential race. Okay. Just a yes or no answer, if you don't mind. You support your party's nominee, Donald Trump?
Yes.
Okay. Must be difficult in the Senate, then, with your colleagues like John McCain, Lindsey Graham, Susan Collins, probably Thad Cochran, many others who are part of the Never Trump movement, who have even praised Hillary Clinton, who have said they'll vote for Hillary Clinton. How much tension is there in the GOP?
Oh, there's not much tension at all. And please, Senator Cochran is going to support Donald Trump.
Okay.
So let me clarify that. I think we're running sheriff's races in all of these Senate contests. There are 24 seats to defend, and I think we're in good shape. I saw some really good polls this morning. And so Susan Collins has to do her own thing in Maine. I can tell you she's very popular up there. She's not up this year. But next door, Kelly Ayotte, I would say, would win if the election were held today.
But what about the lack of support?
She has said for Pennsylvania. Kelly Ayotte is an excellent senator for New Hampshire. There are various degrees of support for Donald Trump. I think Donald Trump has a very good chance to win and be elected. But clearly in some states, he's not exactly a draw at the top of the ticket, and they're threading the needle.
Things he says distribute all, and things he does distribute. One of the things he done, not paying taxes. He's a billionaire and hasn't paid taxes for up to 19 years. I mean, does that bother you?
They never proved that. The New York Times said could for 19 years.
I think
they had 1 year.
His own team has admitted that he hasn't paid taxes.
Let me referee this debate between Doug and Dave. Well, listen, I haven't seen those returns. If he had that big of a loss and is entitled to it under the laws, I think he would really be crazy to just voluntarily send money to the government. But I don't know the facts there. I know that the tax laws need to be revised. Loopholes need to be eliminated, and I think he's for that. But no, that does not disqualify him to be president any more than the Clinton, all of these foundation issues.
Oh, there's definitely a bunch of foundation issues.
Those things are just as much
There's the email,
of a concern.
There's the Benghazi questions, but one thing that Trump is having terrible trouble with is women. His lack of support among women is way under Hillary Clinton's. I mean, and if he can't reverse that, he is not going to win. So what does he have to do to get support from women?
I think there's a gender gap, no question about it. But the gender gap is on the other side too. I mean, men are overwhelmingly supporting Mr. Trump and reluctance to support Hillary Clinton. So it sort of evens out. I just think I think he needs to have a good debate. And here's what I think he needs to do. I think men, women, people of all races really are not comfortable with Hillary Clinton as their next president. And they are looking for the other guy on the stage to be presidential, and for them to conclude, of these two people up there, Donald Trump can be a president have confidence in. And I think if people show that in the debate, I think their natural inclination to choose someone other than Hillary Clinton will come through.
You know, the tough thing
I think it could be a Reagan versus Carter situation.
Yeah, the tough thing for Donald Trump is, and you can just sense it in his team, is he the Trump that went through the primaries during the debates, who was very aggressive and kind of a wild card and sort of shoot from the hip? Or does he take a deep breath, kind of be the teleprompter Trump, and be more civil when it comes to dealing with Hillary?
Maybe a happy medium there.
You think so? That's what you would advise?
Obviously, there was an appeal that the mainstream media didn't see, didn't detect, all through the primaries, and it's part of Donald Trump's vote-getting appeal. There's no question about it. People saw him as somebody who's going to tell it like it is, who would make America strong again, make our word, our bond again internationally. And so there's a great appeal there. I do think maybe in the second half of the debate, he went a little far afield, interrupting too much, just as Senator Kaine did in the vice presidential debate. So I don't know. I think a little restraint and a little discipline will help. And I think at that point, the American people can say, this Secretary of State that we don't want to be president has an alternative that we can depend on.
Are you concerned about Mr. Trump's relationship with Russian President Vladimir Putin? He's actually called him, and I quote now, a great leader. And obviously, Putin is trying to undermine the U.S. election in some form or fashion. I mean, are you concerned about his relationship?
I don't know that I can agree with that President Putin is trying to undermine our election. I think he's trying to undermine the United States. And I have very low regard for President Putin. I think he is an international outlaw. I think he invaded a country that we were a treaty partner with. And I think our position still should be that Ukraine is a whole country and Crimea needs to go back to the rightful treaty owner of that. So in so many ways, I think Vladimir Putin is a bad actor.
So Trump should distance himself from Putin?
I would suggest that, and I don't know that he's being unrealistic about Putin. I think by the same token, there's some ways we have to work together. And what I heard Trump say is that he's a strong leader. And, you know, I guess in many ways he is a strong leader.
Actually, what he said, Doug, is he's a strong leader for his country, and everyone always leaves that part.
And I think his country...
that could be argued.
I think his country is ill-served. I think the
Russians if you
ill-served by
put your opponents in jail all the time, if you execute...
I wouldn't want to live in Russia.
Yeah, you call that a strong leader? I'm not necessarily sure I agree with that. Anyway, let's move on to other topics.
But can I say 30 seconds?
Go.
I think the history of the Obama-Clinton policy of the reset has just been abysmal. And basically the result has been that Vladimir Putin and other strongmen have felt licensed to go in to places like Georgia and Ukraine and to actually deprive people of their freedom. So I think really Donald Trump is a chance to stand up and for America to be strong again against people like that.
All right, let's talk about terrorism. ISIS still on the move. ISIS still a powerful force wreaking havoc in Syria.
Right.
What do we need to do about ISIS? What direction should we take, whether it's under Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump? Doesn't matter. What does this country need to do to fight terrorism?
Well, can I back up and say that the failure of the Obama and Clinton administration and their foreign policy in negotiating a status of forces agreement with our allies in Iraq has left this vacuum. And so what we won't do is that sort of failure of leadership where we could have gotten an agreement, we could have left a presence there, and ISIS wouldn't have been given that vacuum to operate in. But at this point, we have to deal with our allies. We have to provide as much technical assistance as we can and let the Arab leaders do what they have asked us to help them do, and that is defeat ISIS. We're going to have to defeat the Islamic State.
You know, there's a lot of
confusion. It's going to have to be done militarily.
There's a lot of confusion. I could have renegotiated the deal, though.
I would challenge you on that. We wanted to leave a follow-on force, much as we did in Korea. There's been no fighting in 60 years in Korea. We've had forces all over the world that haven't been engaged in combat. But the Bush administration always wanted to leave a presence there as a stabilizing force, much like we have in Afghanistan. There's hardly any combat going on in Afghanistan. If we leave, there'll be a vacuum. And we could have easily, we had the diplomatic talent to negotiate a status of forces agreement, and President Obama was too eager to say, I got us out of Iraq. Well, he got us out of Iraq, and we left a vacuum there, and we're going to have to fix it.
Senator Roger Wicker, we've got to take a break. We'll be right back and talk about some other issues affecting South Mississippi and the nation.
Okay.
I'm Jasmine Murray, and I care about Mississippi's children.
Welcome back to WLOX News This Week. Our guest again is U.S. Senator Roger Wicker. Good to have him back here in South Mississippi and with us here on the show this weekend. Senator, I want to talk a little budget. Does the White House, does Congress, does anyone actually do budgets anymore? It seems to me like we have these continuing resolutions, kind of patchwork, Band-Aid, and then we get to the deadline and we flirt with the government shutdown and everyone throws a bunch of stuff into a spending bill. If a business operated that way, it would be bankrupt.
Okay. Well, in 2015, our first year as a Republican majority in the United States Senate, we passed a budget, and it was passed by the House of Representatives. If we adhere to that, we will have a balanced budget in 10 years. Now, what you're talking about is the absence of any appropriation bills. And here we got to the end of the fiscal year, the end of September, and had to do a temporary spending bill to tide us over till December. The Appropriations Committee, under Senator Cochran, approved every appropriation bill under the budget caps, and they passed them in a unanimous form. Every Democrat, every Republican on the Appropriations Committee voted for these. They were sent to the floor, and we couldn't get the 60 votes that's necessary for consideration.
Because of Harry Reid?
Because of Harry Reid deciding that it was to his advantage not to have a discussion week by week by week about budget, about the housing budget, Justice Department budget, and things like that. And so we get to the point where at the end of the year, we certainly were not going to have a shutdown. But what we did is we passed Zika funding, and we passed a continuing spending bill at no increase in spending. So the level for last year will be the level until we get this thing decided. And when we pass the appropriation bills in November or December, there will be no increase in appropriation spending.
You said something very telling just a moment ago. You said that if this budget had passed, the one that the Appropriations Committee had approved, we'd have a balanced budget.
If we adhere to it.
We'd have a balanced budget in 10 years. We are $20 trillion in debt. You're looking best case scenario balanced budget in 10 years. It could be 25, it could be 30 trillion. Are we over the edge? Have we run off a cliff that we can never escape from when it comes to our debt?
I hope not. This is one of the great failings that we've had in the last 8 years, and maybe it's a failing on the part of all parties. I'll just say this, divided government is the time to tackle entitlement reform. Social Security reform, we need to protect Social Security. We just need to slow the growth rate. Medicare, we don't need to do away with Medicare, but we need to slow the growth rate. Now, when Ronald Reagan was president and Tip O'Neill, a Democrat, was Speaker of the House, they came together in divided government, held hands and did something hard, and saved Social Security for a generation.
Actually, Bill Clinton and Trent Lott did pretty much the same thing, too.
They did
on a lot of issues.
But
we don't seem to see that
They passed welfare reform.
Yeah.
They passed Social Security. I mean, they passed Medicare reform. It was Reagan and O'Neill that did Social Security.
Why is the atmosphere in Washington?
These gangs of six that came out of the House and Senate and presented an outline to President Obama. Basically, they didn't even get a thank you note from the president. If he had taken this opportunity in divided government, we could have had a Reagan and O'Neill moment, and that's what you have to tackle entitlements. You can't do it one party for it and one party against it. It simply has to be bipartisan across the board.
Why is the atmosphere in Washington become so poisonous, so cantankerous? Nobody likes anybody, it seems.
Okay.
That's the way it appears to the American people.
A little dramatic.
Okay.
It seems that way to people around the country, though.
In all of this absence of getting our appropriation bills passed and getting the consensus to bring them to the floor, still we passed 31 Senate bills, sent them to the House, sent them to the President, and he has signed them into law. 31 Senate bills signed this year. We haven't done that since 1990. So a lot of things get done. And of course, you know, we repealed No Child Left Behind, returned education power from the federal government to the states. We did middle income tax reform. We've done a lot of things and gotten the president to sign it. But it does seem that on these big issues, and this issue that's going to topple us if we don't tackle it, of entitlement reform, and that's the $20 trillion debt.
Right.
We have not used this time of divided government.
Yeah, it seems so polarized. Debate tonight, Donald Trump, the second debate, kind of a town hall with Anderson Cooper and Martha Raddatz, and you can watch it at WLOX Center. Good having you.
I'd love to watch it on WLOX.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Always welcome as always.
And when